Okay, so we're going to start going through the test questions today. The first question says, P is the midpoint of TV. Find the value of R when TP equals 2R and PV equals R plus 15. So when they tell us that we have a midpoint, what we should be marking on our diagram is that these two segments, TP and PV, have to be congruent to each other because the point P is in the middle. To find the value of R, what we should do is we should label our diagram. So T to P is 2R, so I'm going to put 2R here. P to V is R plus 15, so I'm going to write R plus 15 here. Now, since we know that they are congruent, we're going to set them equal. So we say 2R plus, 2R is equal to R plus 15. Okay, now to start solving, you can draw that line down the middle if you need to. You want to get your variables to one side, so you subtract the R, and what you're left with, 2R minus an R leaves me with R, and then I get R is equal to 15. So when they ask for my R value, I'm just going to write 15. The next one says line E bisects segment FH. They want us to find GH and FH. So this term bisects means that it cuts it in half. So similar to the last problem, I have two congruent segments. FG is congruent to GH. Now, pieces that they asked me to find, they asked me to find GH. We just marked it congruent to FG, so I'm going to fill in 6.5 here. So nothing to solve there, we just need to know that vocab term. Okay, from here they ask us to find the measure of FH. So if I want to find FH, what I'm going to do is take 6.5, add it to 6.5, and I should end up with 13 here. So the length of F to H should be 13. Okay, the next problem says ray SQ bisects angle RST. So once again, if it bisects, what it means is it's cutting it in half. I'm going to mark this angle here and this angle here congruent. They have the same measure. To find the value of X, it says if the measure of angle QST is 3X and the measure of angle RST is 78. So we want to label these on our diagrams. QST, so QST, this angle right here is going to be 3X. RST represents the full angle. The full angle is going to measure 78 degrees. Okay, so there's two different ways we could do this. We could say, since this angle here is 3X, this angle here is 3X, and those two angles together will give us this total right here, the 78. So I could say 3X plus 3X is equal to 78. Since these two are on the same side of the equal sign, I'm going to combine them. So I end up with 6X is equal to 78. From there, if we divide by 6 on both sides, I'm going to find that X is equal to 13. The next problem says A and B, or angle B and A, are supplements. Now, supplements means that they have to equal to 180 degrees. Angle A is 45. What is the measure of angle B? We could write an equation, measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B has to equal 180. So angle A, they told us, is 45. Angle B, they told us, is what we're trying to find, so we just leave it, is equal to 180. From here, if I wanted to find the measure of angle B, I would subtract 45 from both sides, and what I'm going to be left with is the measure of angle B is equal to 135 degrees. I could check my work by adding the two angles and checking that they add to 180. Okay, the next problem here says angle P and angle Q are complements. Now, complements means that I have two angles. These two angles will equal to 90. Angle P is 32. We can solve similar to the last problem. Measure of angle P plus the measure of angle Q will have to be equal to 90. Well, the measure of angle P is 32, so I'm going to substitute that value in. I'm trying to find the measure of angle Q. That can stay there. Set it equal to 90. From here, all I'm going to do is subtract 32 from both sides, and I get the measure of angle Q to be 58 degrees. Okay. The next problem, using the diagram to find the measures, things that I look for here is I want to look for linear pairs. Linear pairs are supplementary, meaning they equal to 180, or I look for vertical angles, and I know vertical angles have to be congruent. Now, vertical means that they are located across from each other and they're formed by intersecting lines. So, for example, this line here and this line here, they're forming this angle. Well, I know the angle across from it has to be the same. So this angle over here is 31 degrees. Okay, I can use a similar idea here. Angle AHG is marked as 90. I know that over here I should have 90 degrees. So these two angles together add up to that 90. Okay, I can use that same idea when I go this direction. I know these two together have to equal to 180, so that's a 90-degree angle there. If I wanted to find this missing angle right here, I could take 90 and subtract 31, and I'm going to be left with 59 degrees. Once I have that 59-degree angle, I know the angle opposite of it, the vertical angle, is going to measure the same. They are congruent. Okay, how do I find these angles right here? Well, I know together they equal to 90, and these arcs mean that those two angles are congruent. So if I take 90 and divide by 2, I get 45 degrees for each of these two angles. Okay, now if we start going through what they're asking for, find the measure of angle AHB. Well, if I trace it, AHB, that's going to be this full measure right here. So I could say 59 plus 31, what I'm going to end up with is 90, or I could have looked at that little box that we drew in. Okay, the next one says measure of angle FHG. Well, if I go FHG, that's going to be this angle right here, which we have marked as 31 degrees. The measure of angle AHF. So if I go from A to H to F, that's traveling from here all the way over to here. We just said this angle right here was 31 degrees. I know this angle right here has that box, which means it's 90. So if I take 90 and add it to 31, I'm going to end up with 121 degrees. The next angle is the angle CHD. So CHD is this angle right here. We said there was a 90-degree angle. It's cut in half, so each angle is going to measure 45 degrees. Okay, the next section tells us that we have complementary angles. Now, complementary, once again, means that they equal to 90 degrees. They give us the measure of angle C, which is x minus 8, and the measure of angle D, which is 3x plus 2. So what we're doing here is we're going to add the two angles and set them equal to 90. Okay, so if I substitute for angle C, I'm going to put an x minus 8 plus angle D is going to be 3x plus 2. Together they equal 90. Okay, from here, since these terms are on the same side of the equal sign, I combine them. X plus 3x gives me 4x. Then I have negative 8 plus 2. Negative 8 plus 2 gives me a negative 6 equal to 90. Okay, I want to get 4x on the side by itself, so I'm going to add the 6, and now I have 4x is equal to 96. So if 4x is equal to 96, my last step is to divide by 4, and I'm going to find that my x value is going to be 24. So once I have my x value, now it's asking me to find the measure of angle C and the measure of angle D. So I need to go back and substitute this value in anytime there's an x. So to find angle C, I would say, I'm going to write over here, measure of angle C is equal to 24 minus 8, which leaves me with 16. The measure of angle D, it says it was 3x plus 2, so I'm going to take 3 times our x value is 24, and then plus 2. Uh-oh, I think we have an error here. Maybe. Okay, so 3 times 24 is going to be 72, and then if I take 72 plus 2, I end up with 74 degrees. One thing I could do here is I could add my two angles, 74 plus 16, and make sure they add up to that 90 degrees that we talked about, which they do. On the next problem, we talk about supplementary angles once again. Supplementary means they equal to 180. So the measure of angle A is 2x, the measure of angle B is 5x plus 40. Find the value of x, the measure of angle A, and the measure of angle B. I know that the two angles added together, the sum of the two angles is 180. The measure of angle A is 2x. The measure of angle B is 5x plus 40. Set that equal to 180. From here, I need to combine like terms. So 2x plus 5x gives me 7x, plus 40 is equal to 180. From here, I'm going to subtract the 40 to get 7x on a side by itself, and I end up with 7x is equal to 140. What's my last step? Divide by 7. I find that my x value is 20. So x is 20, and now I need to find my two angles. So the measure of angle A is going to be 2 times 20, which gives me 40. The measure of angle B is going to be 5 times 20 plus 40. 5 times 20 gives me 100. 100 plus 40 is 140. Make sure I put these in the correct blanks. Oh, yep, we found this one to be 40. Okay. The next diagram is really testing you to see if you know your vocab. Okay. So when I look at this diagram, it says, use the diagram to answer the questions. Remember to use 3 points when we name angles. Okay. So name an obtuse. Obtuse means greater than 90. Name an obtuse angle vertical to angle AFC. So if I trace angle AFC, AFC is this angle right here. Okay. Now, talking about this angle. If I talk about an angle that's vertical to it, vertical means that they're across from each other. They're formed by intersecting lines. So if I trace these lines through, this angle would be vertical to this angle down here. How do I name that angle? Well, I just trace it E, F, D. So I use my angle notation, and I write E, F, D. I could also call it angle DFE. That's the same angle. Okay, the next one says, name an acute angle that is vertical to angle AFE. Well, angle AFE is this angle right here. It would be vertical to which angle? It's across from here, which is angle CFD. CFD, or I could call it DFC. Okay, next one says, name an angle that is adjacent. Adjacent means that it is next to. They share a side. They share a vertex. So angle CFD, CFD would be this angle here. I have two options, okay? This angle here is next to this angle here. And how do I name that angle? I would name it angle BFC. Or I could have the angle that is over here, because these two share that line FD. So I could say angle EFD. Now, I don't need both answers there. I only need one. So either one of those answers is correct. Okay, adjacent means next to each other. The last one says, name an angle that forms a linear pair with angle EFD. Okay, so EFD, once again, is this angle here. Now, linear pair means they have to be adjacent, so they're next to each other. They are going to form a straight angle. In other words, they're going to form a line. Okay, so I have to pick an angle that is next to angle EFD. So an angle that's adjacent to it, I could say angle DFC. Okay, and if I kind of trace through here from one side of the line to the other, that's where I have that 180 degrees, and that's how I know it's a linear pair. Okay, the other option I could use would be the angle, the other adjacent angle, which is over here. So angle AFE is my other option. And if I trace that through, do you see where we have that 180, where we get this straight angle right here? Okay, moving over to the back side. Now, on the back side, this says, use what you know about vertical angles and linear pairs to find the values of x and y. There's actually going to be different ways that we can solve here, so I'm going to show you one way, and then you're free to explore some others. Okay, things that we know, we said vertical angles have to be congruent, meaning that they are the same. Linear pairs are going to be supplementary, which means they equal to 180. Okay, so what I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to say, okay, these two angles right here, they form that straight angle from one side of the line to the other. That's our linear pair. So I know these two angles have to equal to 180. I'm going to say 2x plus 2 plus x plus 40 is equal to 180. So from here, I combine like terms because these are on the same side of the equation. I'm going to have 2x plus x, which gives me 3x. 2 plus 40 gives me 42, and I'm going to set that equal to 180. From there, I need to subtract the 42, and what I'm left with is 3x is equal to 138. So my last step would be divide by 3, and if I take 138 and divide by 3, I end up with x equal to 46, and that's where I get my x value. Now, to find y, what I would need to do is substitute this value in. I have 2x plus 2, so this is going to become 2 times 46 plus 2. 2 times 46 gives me 92. 92 plus 2 is 94. And what do we know about vertical angles? Well, vertical angles are congruent, or they are the same. So for angle y, I could just fill in 94 degrees. Now, there are other ways to solve this, but this is one way to work through it. Okay, so let's use that idea when we move to number 11. We said vertical angles are congruent to each other. So I'm going to say 5x plus 20 has to be equal to 100. To solve here, I subtract the 20 from both sides. These will cancel out. I have 5x is equal to 80, and when I take 80 and I divide by 5, I'm going to find that x is equal to 16. Okay? From there, I can do two different things. I could say that these two angles right here form a straight angle, so they have to equal to 180. That's the route I'm going to take. So I'm going to say 10y minus 10 plus 100 has to equal 180. As I solve, this negative 10 and that 100 are on the same side. So I need to say 10y is equal to, 10y plus 90 is equal to 180. Okay, from there, I'm going to subtract the 90 from both sides, and I'm left with 10y equal to 90. My last step from here is to divide by 10, and I find my y value is equal to 9. Okay? All right, on the next diagram, angle ABD and DBC are complementary angles. Now, complementary means that together they will equal to 90 degrees. Okay, the sum of two angles is equal to 90 degrees. So what that means is I need to add them. I'm going to take 7x plus 4 plus 5x plus 2 and set it equal to 90. Terms that are on the same side, we need to combine them. Okay, so I take 7 and I add it to 5 and I end up with a 12x. I'm going to take 4 and add it to 2 and I end up with 6. So 12x plus 6 is equal to 90. From here, if I subtract 6 from both sides, I'm going to be left with 12x equal to 84. My last step is to divide by 12, and I'm going to find that x is equal to 7. Okay, the next section is really review of vocab. So the word bank says use the word bank to match each property. So the first one says angle XYZ is congruent to XYZ. This is modeling the reflexive property. Reflexive property means exact same. So these are the same on both sides. Exact same thing on both sides is the reflexive property. The next one says if angle XYZ is congruent to angle JKL, then angle JKL is congruent to angle XYZ. Really what's happening here is our terms are just switching places. So the one that switches places is going to be the symmetric property, and they just switch. Okay, so this is going to be F. The next one says if x over 6 is equal to 5, then 6 times x over 6 is equal to 6 times 5. This is what I start with. How do I get here? What did they do to change it? Well, it looks like they put these on there, and these are being multiplied by both terms. So this is an example of my multiplication property. I'm multiplying on both sides of the equation, so that's what makes it the multiplication property. The next one I have a number outside of parentheses is equal to 10, and then it changed to 4x plus 8. Well, how did they get this 4x plus 8? They take this number through 4 times x and then 4 times 2. That's called distributing. So our distributive property is letter B. We could cross these out as we're going through them. Okay. The next one says if AB is equal to MN and MN is equal to XY, then AB is equal to XY. This is an example of our transitive property, and with transitive what I look for is overlapping terms. These terms overlap, I eliminate them, and then I'm just left with AB equal to XY. That's how we get that statement. So this is our transitive property. The last one, if I were to just give you this equation in class and I said, how would you solve this? Well, really what you would do is you would add 4 to both sides. So this is an example of the addition property, which is letter E. Okay? The conditional statements looked really good on the test. So it says, for each conditional statement, underline the hypothesis, circle the conclusion. Okay? The hypothesis always comes after the word if. The conclusion always comes after the word then. So this first one says, I will donate my money to a charity if I win the lottery. So the hypothesis comes after if. I'm going to underline I win the lottery. That's the hypothesis. If I win the lottery, then what? Then I will donate my money to a charity. So there's our conclusion. The next one says, if it is sunny outside, then I will wear sunscreen. The hypothesis comes after the word if. I underline the hypothesis. The conclusion comes after the word then. I circle the conclusion. Okay? Next section is going to be just a review of the midpoint formula. So it says, find the coordinates of the midpoint of segment FG. Then use the formula below. So what we do first is we label these x1, y1, first x coordinate, first y coordinate, x2, y2, second x coordinate, second y coordinate. I have students asking why we label them. Well, really all you're going to do from here is you're going to plug them in. If my formula is x1 plus x2, what do I have labeled as x1? My x1 is 4. So I write it as 4 plus, then it says x2. So my x2 is 10. I put that over 2. Next, I'm going to do y1 plus y2. So my y1 is 1. I'm going to add it to y2. y2 I have labeled as 9. Okay, so 1 plus 9 over 2. Continue to break this down. 4 plus 10 gives me 14 over 2. 1 plus 9 gives me 10 over 2. Then I break it down again. 14 divided by 2 leaves me with 7. 10 divided by 2 leaves me with 5. Notice that my answer has an x coordinate and a y coordinate for my final answer. Not one number, but 2. Okay, same idea with the next problem. So start by labeling x1, y1, x2, y2. So from here, I'm going to take negative 3 and add it to negative 6 over 2. I'm going to take y1 plus y2. So 1 plus negative 5 over 2. Continue to work here. Negative 3 plus negative 6 is a negative 9 over 2. 1 plus a negative 5 gives me negative 4 over 2. Well, if I take negative 9 and divide by 2, I'm going to end up with a negative 4.5. If I take negative 4 and divide by 2, I'm going to end up with a negative 2. Okay. Taking a look at that bottom part says justify each step in solving the equation. Okay, so this is our example of a proof. The first step is always what we're presented with. We call this the given information. From here, I'm going to ask you, well, how did they get from step A to step B? How did they get from 3/4 to 3? Well, if I wanted to eliminate this fraction right here, what I would do is I would multiply by both sides of my equation by 4. So when I take 3/4 times 4, the 4's cancel out, and that's where they get this 3. And then they're just showing 4 times that parentheses there. So what we used here is the multiplication property. And then I can eliminate this one. Well, from here, I look at the next two steps, and the 3x doesn't change, but on the right-hand side of the equation, I have 4 parentheses 6 plus 2x, and now it's 24 plus 8x. So what they did here is they brought this 4 through, so 4 times 6 gave us 24. 4 times 2x gives us 8x. Now, this isn't called the multiplication property because I didn't multiply on both sides. I distributed to one side of the equation, so this is called the distributive property. Okay, the next step looks like they're getting their x's to one side. So how did they bring that 8x over? Well, they need to do the opposite, so they're going to subtract 8x. So this is called the subtraction property. And then the last step in solving, if I wanted to figure out what my x value was, I would just divide both sides by -5. So this last step is called the division property.